Hi, this is Craig Stocks here for Utah Desert Remote Observatories. You can find us online at utahdesertremote.com. And today I want to talk about how I do the colored symbols at the top that show the color for sulfur, hydrogen, oxygen, and in this case an RGB layer, and exactly how those are color mapped and what they're representing in the finished image. I'll show you how I do that in Photoshop. So we're here in Photoshop, and I've got other videos that show the details of how we process this in PixInsight to create the layers that we load into Photoshop, and those are then loaded into layer groups. And if you look at the layers palette over here on the right, you can see there's a layer group for sulfur, oxygen, hydrogen, the RGB data, and then the stars. And of course we can turn any one of these off and on if we decide we wanted a starless layer, or if we want without the contribution of RGB, we can just turn those layers off and on. And the way these are color mapped is using the advanced blending options, so that sulfur is contributing only red, oxygen is contributing blue and green, with some reduction in the green to make it just a little bit more blue, and then the hydrogen is mostly an orange color. But you don't know that just by looking at it. And so this is a technique I use to make the document somewhat self-documenting. And what we're going to do is we're going to put the text inside this layer group so that the text takes on the same color as the group, whatever color that happens to be. So let's start with the sulfur, and right now there's just the sulfur data, and then there's a levels adjustment that is adjusting the brightness and contrast of that. So we'll click on the layer itself, the pixel bearing layer, and we want to add a text layer right above it, but below any other adjustments that happen in that layer group. So we'll choose the text tool. You can get that to either by tapping the T on the keyboard or by choosing it from the tools palette over on the left. And usually I like to use like a 50% gray, or roughly a 50% gray, so that it's kind of represents the mid-tone of the color. So I'll just come up here to wherever I think is a good point. I'll click and type S2 and commit that, and you can see it comes out red. And I'll just grab the move tool and put it somewhere for safekeeping. Now let's go to the oxygen layer, and I'll do the same thing. I'll click on the oxygen data itself, grab my text tool, tap T, and then this is 03, and you notice automatically that comes out as cyan, or a bluish cyan, because that's what color everything in this group is. Lastly, we'll go to the hydrogen, do the same thing. This will be HA, and you'll notice it comes out as kind of an orange color. They're somewhat dim, and that's because I'm using a 50% gray. If we made the text white rather than gray, it would be brighter. And then let's go up to the RGB layer, and we'll just do the same thing again. I'll tap T, and we'll just type RGB. And you'll notice that that is all three channels, RG and B, so that shows up as white. Now, these are a little bit ragged, and they're all in different groups, which makes them a little bit difficult to, if we wanted to align them, for instance, we have to pick through the groups to pick out the text layers. There's a trick to that. If we look at the top of the layers palette, you can see the word kind, and then to the right are symbols or icons that represent different kinds of layers. And if we want to isolate just the text layers, I can click on the T for text layers, and you can see now these are just the 4 text layers. So I can shift click on those to select them all, grab the move tool, and vertically align those. So now they all line up nice and neat. If we want to adjust the spacing, for instance, if we want to move the RGB over, I can move that over either with the mouse or with the cursor keys. If we decide we wanted to make these all white instead of medium tone, we can again select all 4 and go to the text tool and click on color. And let's say we just want to make them a little brighter so they stand out a little bit more. And if we want to reduce the opacity, we could reduce the opacity to something like 80% or 70%, whatever feels good to you. And then when we're done with all that, we just click again on the T and we're back to the main image. You can put these in an area of the image that you're going to crop out later. So for instance, if we want to move these even further, again, we'll just go back to the T, move these to wherever we want, where they're out of the way. You can even expand the canvas and put them down below if that works easier. If you decide that you want to save this as a master file without these but still keep them, you can just turn those 4 layers off and just unclick the kind selection to go back to the main document. The great thing about this is as we change any of the colors, so for instance, let's target the hydrogen. So let's go to our hydrogen layer, and if you recall, the main control for the color of the hydrogen is this curves layer. And that's where we have pulled the blue out and part of the green, so it comes through as a kind of an orange color. If we wanted to make this more of a classical SHO image with more green and less red, we can do that simply by going into the individual channels in this curves layer. If we turn down the red, for instance, and turn the green back up, you can see what's happening to the color of the image, but you can also see what happened to the color of the HA in the colors. Now it's showing us that we have red, green, and cyan. So we might want to go to the oxygen and take the green out of it so that it's more of a classical blue. So you can adjust it so that the image looks good, and all the same time you're capturing exactly what those color contributions are from each element. It's just a nice slick way to keep track of what you have done when you look back at the image later. And even if these layers are turned off, if I go back to all the text layers, turn the text layers off, when I save this as a PSB document or a Photoshop document, all those layers and all those settings get saved. So those are going to be there the next time we come and look at the document. I hope you found this helpful. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments below. If you really find this useful, be sure to like and subscribe. If you really want a lot, check out our website for some information about an upcoming master class that's going to be held here in St. George in September. And as always, I hope you have a great day today and an even better night tonight under a clear, dark sky. Thanks.